Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I thought we'd talk about, I'm going to call it martial yoga. This is a response to a blog post my friend Adam Chan put up on his Facebook martial arts group. And he was talking about how people will dismiss certain arts, particularly traditional arts or some traditional martial art techniques, and say, oh, that doesn't work. And he and I both sort of agree on this, that especially with traditional arts, you should not be so quick to dismiss that something, quote, doesn't work. All you can really say maybe is it doesn't work for you so far, not yet. You know, these arts were all created in eras where martial arts was really necessary for survival. Every single thing about these traditional arts worked for somebody at some point, or it would have been discarded. They couldn't afford to be woo-woo and philosophical without being functional. You know, like they could be as philosophical as they wanted, but they had to reflect that in functional martial arts, or you could get your butt killed. So it all worked for somebody at some point. But I think two things happened that kind of acted as sort of equalizers. One is the obvious one, guns. Once guns came along, anybody could buy a gun and shoot some empty-handed fighting master when he walked out of his house. Guns make all the skill less of an advantage. Also, the other thing is courts, our court system. In the old days, you know, someone did you wrong, everybody knew that was, you were justified to go, you know, fuck them up. People looked after themselves. There were courts of sorts, but it wasn't like it is now with all of our legal codes and everything. You could be in the right and end up in jail. So martial arts became more martial yoga and less functional necessities. And by martial yoga, I mean, yoga means yoke or unity or oneness. There are ways to unify mind and body within a martial framework. So you're using martial training exercises to feel like a oneness, a connection between your mind and your body and the world around you. There are, of course, many martial artists today who are combat ready, lots of them. But I think if you went back 400 or 500 years and took every martial artist on the planet and put them in a room and said, how many of you have used your art in a real confrontation with somebody who meant to do you harm in the last 4 or 5 years, probably almost all of them or most of them would raise their hand. Whereas today it would be a minority. The vast majority of us who do martial arts don't get into fights and haven't been in a fight. I haven't been in a fight since I was in 7th grade. So we're doing it more as a martial yoga, as a way to develop ourselves, improve our balance and our health and our lives. But in the process of transition from being a functional combat art to being a martial yoga, certain things get lost because there isn't that constant reality testing which makes sure that it's functional. Certain parts of the techniques get muddy, or they're lost entirely, or 8 out of the 10 important things about this thing working are there, but the 2 are missing. I always ask my martial art friends, how many times have you been struggling in class with some technique or something, and your teacher comes along and makes an adjustment like that, and all of a sudden it works, or makes a tiny adjustment in timing, or a tiny adjustment in how much you enter or don't enter, or where your weight is. Those keys can be really, really subtle, right? So imagine you're struggling with a technique and you don't have the genius or the drive to figure it out for yourself what's missing, and you just go, shit, this doesn't work. You know, it just doesn't work. And then you can say, karate doesn't work, or this doesn't work, or that doesn't work, because it hasn't worked for you yet. So when something doesn't work for me, I usually ask myself, what am I missing? There might be something missing here. We learned a traditional set from a guy once, and it was an 8 energies set from the Chen style, and there was one movement in it that just did not work. You had to take somebody's arm and just pull them down, and if they resisted at all, it just wouldn't work. And so my feeling was, what am I missing? So what I realized is that if I entered in and take his elbow and bring it up a little bit towards him and take his balance a little bit, then the pull down worked really easily. And I thought, oh, well, that fixes that. But I thought, well, you know, maybe that was in there to begin with. And maybe just one teacher along the way just left out that one little key. Something is always falling through the cracks. This is like the game of telegraph where you whisper things in someone's ear and it goes around the room and it comes back different. Generation after generation, something's always falling through the cracks. None of us is aware of every single application for every single possible movement. We don't catch everything. And this is why we need to test these arts in whatever arena we're going to use them to see if they work. Because if you don't test them, they won't work. It's that simple. I'm not to put down martial yoga. That's almost totally what I do. I'm not combat trained, and I haven't been in a fight since I was in 7th grade. I use this in arenas like my marriage and my creative life and my performing life, and when I play guitar and when I sing and when I move and when I ride my bike. And in all the arenas that I tried, and I test these Tai Chi principles every day, and it works really well for me in those areas. And my Tai Chi is well tested in my daily life. But it's not tested in the combat world of street fighting, and I don't pretend it is. That's a key thing. If you're doing martial yoga, recognize that you're doing martial yoga. If you're doing street fight, recognize that you're doing that. There's too many people who are doing this, who are pretending they're doing this. Maybe they believe it themselves. But boy, nothing like a real confrontation to show you, oh my God, this is temple work. This is personal perfection, perfecting yourself, or self-development, or what I call martial yoga. This is the real deal over here. The timing, the intensity, the speed, everything changes. So this doesn't translate to that without practice, right? Without testing. So we got to test these things, otherwise they're just going to fall through the cracks and be lost forever. One of the major keys that I often notice is missing when people tell me a technique isn't working or doesn't work is that they haven't stolen their partner's balance. They haven't gotten their balance or tipped them in a certain way. There's all kinds of things you can do to someone when you've got their balance that don't work at all if you don't have their balance. And if that key is missing in the instruction, it's just like you're just yanking this chain like we were yanking on those arms, and it just didn't work. So you take their balance first and then it'll work. So there's loads of keys like that. Keep your eyes open. Don't dismiss traditional arts just because they don't work for you, or they don't work one practitioner against another in the ring. Maybe it didn't work for them, but that doesn't mean the whole art doesn't work. Often it's the way it's being used, not the art itself. So keep testing your arts. Be honest with yourself and with other people about what you can do, you know, the world will be a better place. The less theoretical this stuff is, and the more practical it is, the better. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of thing. Visit my website, GeneBurnett.com, and have a nice day.